Hi guys, this is Dr. Sadasivam once again with you. In the last video, we had talked a lot about nature of emotional intelligence. And in this video, we are going to focus on the effect of cognitions and emotions in our behavior. We had learnt in all the past videos that the role of emotions are most important in regulating our outward behavior. And one thing that we all need to keep in mind is that the role of emotions have been completely ignored in most of the cognitive science researches, because cognitive science studies the model of a mind in a scientific manner, which broadly is about understanding oneself, understanding others, and putting some of those scientific insights into use. Of course, using a structured approach, and this is otherwise called as cognition, because most of these cognitive aspects are measurable through various instruments which are tested for validity and reliability using various scientific processes. But the fact of the matter is that many a times emotions go much beyond the language of the reach of language and cognition. So that happens to be an unexplored area that makes the secret of successful relationships so complex, so compelling, and so puzzling. So lot of plumbing is required, some kind of tinkering is required, because there is intelligence in emotions, and English intelligence can be brought into emotions. We would like to repeat this word once again, that there is intelligence in emotions, because to have a proper emotional behavior, little amount of intelligence is required. And with proper efforts, intelligence can be brought into emotions. So this once again confirms the fact that enhancing somebody's emotional quotient is a learnable skill. Now, to bring a perspective into the whole discussion, we will talk about some of the path-breaking researches of psychologists. And the first name that comes to our mind is B.F. Skinner. In fact, B.F. Skinner was a behaviorist, and he conducted lots and lots of researches saying that behavior that is seen objectively outside, that alone can be scientifically analyzed. So what he says is, whatever behavior is manifested outside in the form of actions or behavior which are visible to the eyes, only they can be scientifically analyzed. So most of the inner manifestations within our own mind, our inner thoughts, feelings, motives, in his opinion, they are largely out of bound for scientific research. That is Skinner's model. These are complex theories. We will not go deep into it, but since we are learning the subject of emotional intelligence, we are trying to bring in some learnings of these psychologies. So broadly, we will touch upon those, because those theories are so complex. There's no point going too deep into those, so we will stick to our own topic of discussion, which is emotional intelligence. Now that we have seen Skinner, then came a cognitive revolution in the 1960s. That was much later than Skinner bringing forth his own research. So this cognitive revolution that happened in the 1960s, that looked at brain as if they looked at the computer, because that is what is exactly what is happening today through your machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc. But we are talking about 50, 60 years back, guys, 70 years, when they treated the working of our mind with computer, with silicon chips, ICs, etc. But let us also remember that brain is not a software or a hardware. It is a wetware drowned in a sea of neurochemicals, because every thought There is a chemical within our brain, making new connections all the time, new learnings. Each and every one of those neurochemical reactions within our brain, they give rise to feelings, they give rise to emotions, motives, all very, very abstract, guys, very abstract. So the role of feeling and thinking is extremely important. Now, we have seen in our own experience, I'm sure each one of you might have faced a lot of such experiences. The list is very long. Many guys with IQs of 160 and above, they work for people whose IQs are less than 100. Now, you tell me, how is it possible? With IQ, you may answer certain questions correctly in the examinations. You can score high marks. You can have 10 CGPA. But in the absence of emotional quotient, in the absence of emotional intelligence, something that we have been talking a lot about in all these videos, we will make poor choices in our life decisions. When you talk about life decisions, whom we marry, which job we take, how we maintain our interpersonal relationships, how we cultivate relationships with people who really matter to us, etc., etc. These are some of the realms of emotional quotient we are talking about. Now, we've already studied that there is intelligence in emotions, but bringing intelligence to emotions is also important. Please listen to it very carefully. There is intelligence in emotions, because for reacting in an emotionally proper way, a good amount of intelligence is required. But at the same time, to become emotionally more stable, intelligence needs to be brought to the table, to the emotions. That is also important. So typically when we talk about this particular subject, we are going to talk about the researches of E.L. Thorndike. I'm sure most of you who have done your Masters in Business Administration, MBA, you would have learned some of the theories of Skinner, Thorndike, etc. We're talking about Thorndike. This was in the year 1920, and he talks a lot about intelligence, guys. What he says is most IQ tests, they focus on a narrow band of skills. For example, your linguistic skills, mathematics skills, analytical skills, etc. Based on these IQ skills, you enter an Ivy League, you get a degree from there, you get into an organization as a lateral entrant, and then, of course, you climb the corporate ladder. But understand, the most important thing in this, most of these tests, the IQ tests we are talking about, they're all predictors of success in the classroom as a professor. Because typically, we are talking about your linguistics, mathematics, analytical skills, which can help you take the right decisions in business. There's no doubt. But that's not what business is all about, especially when you talk about leaders. Because leaders require how to get along with people. How do you put up a team? How do you bring that cohesion within the team? And what is it you do to make the team extremely productive? Because you are running an organization. It is not about individual accomplishments. It is not about individual brilliance. It is about how well you set up a team and motivate the team to work, make the team productive for the overall benefits of the organization. And it is those business outcomes, the positive business outcomes in terms of increased business, increased turnover, increased profit, increased net worth, increased market capitalization. That is what will help you climb the corporate ladder, guys. So we have talked about IQ tests, which can be a good predictor how you perform in the classroom as a professor, but it matters less and less, especially when you climb up the tumultuous path of corporate life. That brings to our mind one more great psychologist. Salovey is his name. He summarizes Gardner's personal thing into 5 important domains. These domains are very critical. One is the domain of self-awareness. We will talk about that in a separate video. All these names are self-explanatory at the moment. You can understand these terms at the outset, but we will be making detailed videos in each of these 5 dimensions. 1 video per dimension we will be coming out with. That forms the basic structure of emotional intelligence. So the first is the domain of self-awareness, which we'll be seeing in a separate video. Second is how do you manage your emotions. Third is how do you motivate yourself. Fourth is how do you recognize emotions in others. First is self-motivation, and the other one we are talking about is how you recognize emotions in others. And then finally, it culminates into one domain, which is while you have understood yourself, when you have managed your emotions properly, and after managing your emotions, you've been able to motivate yourself very well. At the same time, you are in a position to recognize emotions in others. And then with all these, how well are you able to handle relationships? So these are the 5 domains we are talking about. Let me once again name those 5 domains, starting with, that's what is important. Domain of self-awareness, managing emotions, number 2. Number 3 is motivating oneself. Number 4 is recognizing emotions in others. And last but not the least, how we handle relationships. These things make the complete learning about emotional intelligence come a full circle, and we will be devoting separate videos on each of these topics. Now, if you look at these 5 different dimensions, different individuals differ in their abilities with respect to each of these dimensions. For example, somebody can be very good in managing his emotions and motivating himself, but when it comes to recognizing emotions of others, he may not do a good job. There may be people who are very good at handling relationships outside, recognizing emotions of others, but they are not good at managing their own emotions. Now you might think the guy is able to handle relationships very well because he is able to recognize others' emotions, but he is unable to manage himself. Then what happens? He takes a good name in the society, but inside, when he comes back home, he is into depression. He's unable to sleep. He's taking a lot of stress. So what is required is a judicious mix amongst all these 5 domains are important. And that mix alone is not important. And over a period of time, we have all discussed that these are learnable skills. What is it that we need to do from our side to improve on each of these dimensions is what is important for us to be, emotionally stable individuals. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Now, if you look at all these 5 different levels, there is nobody in the world who does not have one completely, because everybody has everything, but in bits and pieces. We must understand that the level of abilities that we currently have, they're all neural in nature. By saying neural, we are saying that they are not tangible. They are completely intangible because nothing is visible to the eye. Because whenever we talk about these emotions, relationships, all these are going within our minds. And we all need to understand that brain is remarkably plastic in its character. It is plasticky and it's constantly learning. We will be putting up another video where we will be talking about various interconnections and what is it that needs to be done in order to establish better linkages, better connections. Because that is what is going to make you a sharp individual. That's what makes people brainy individuals. Typically, when we talk about brainy people, we are talking about both aspects of the brain, both the intelligent quotient as well as the emotional quotient. Now, let us understand that there could be lots and lots of lapses in emotions, because nobody in this world can say that I'm 100% emotionally stable man. It's always a work in progress. Remember, we talked about a spectrum 0 to 10. 0 is completely unstable emotionally and 10 completely stable. And in this spectrum, each one of us are at different levels. Some at 3, some at 6, some at 7. So it is a work in progress all the time. So most of these lapses in emotions can be remedied. It is a learnable skill, and that is why we are spending so much time understanding this topic of emotional intelligence. It is a body of habits and a learned response, and with right efforts in the right direction, all these can be learned and they can be cultivated. But genuine efforts need to be put. First is an understanding of what it is, which we are learning through all these videos, and then over a period of time, when we talk about these 5 different emotions in our subsequent videos, we will be providing you lots and lots of tips and techniques in terms of what you should do. They're not rocket science, they're not integral calculus in maths that they are so complex. It's not a rocket science. They're all simple habits that we need to cultivate, which will make us emotionally stable human beings, right? We have talked about IQs, EQs. Just before ending this session, I would like to give you some characteristics of high IQ people, right? IQ is intelligent quotient. They're highly analytical, they are highly sharp, they're highly ambitious, productive, predictable. But they also tend to be critical, condescending, fastidious, so some of the words, right? So this is the mark. These are some traits of people who have high IQs. But at the same time, we're going to talk about some traits of high EQ people, emotionally quotient. Generally speaking, they are socially poised, generally outgoing, they're cheerful all the time. Generally, they are committed to a cause. They involve in social activities. They are sympathetic and very caring in their relationships. They keep in mind the emotions of other people when they interact with them, when they speak with them. Winning is not their prime aim, guys, but winning the hearts of people is their prime aim. And these are EQ people. So we all have a mix of IQ as well as EQ. But we need to first identify where we are at this point in time and what is it that we need to do to become emotionally more and more stable, right? As far as IQ is concerned, we are all qualified people. We all are in high positions in organization. So emotional skill is what we need to learn and cultivate. Unfortunately, emotional quotient is something which is not taught as a subject in universities or colleges. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. We will be coming up with 5 different videos on each of these subjects that we have talked about. Those 5 different dimensions: your self-awareness, managing emotions, motivating oneself, recognizing emotions in others, and handling relationships. We will be coming up with 5 different videos on each of these domains, guys. Okay, this is Dr. Sadasivam signing off till we meet again with the next series of videos on those 5 domains. Bye bye. Jai Hind.